Okay, I'll get started out here, Prabhuji. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girvaradari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girvaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Ramnath Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm
No
having some technical
problem, Prabhuji.
difficulties.
We were just waiting for you.
I'm sorry I'm
Your
late.
association. We always look forward to your association, Prabhuji. Thank you for joining us. Paritesh Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Moga wants to say something? has his hand up.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Hope everyone's okay.
I just clapping, appreciating.
Okay.
Yes, Prabhu, just making sure because he can't hear. I'm not using any instruments, so just.
We can hear some nice KrishnaBook, Krishna Katha as
Yes.
the world is falling apart.
Yes, Prabhuji. Even more important it now. And it is interesting that even in this age where we're talking about so much of materially how advanced the whole world is, but again, still it is just going on the religious lines and, like.
Exactly. 2023, yet barbaric medieval crimes are being committed.
Yes,
it's amazing.
Yes, Prabhuji. And everybody's fighting, with this thing that ours is the only right path and not the other way. So it's always, I do not know. I mean,
this is my analysis, a quick analysis, very quick. There's fault on Israel, America alliance side. There's fault with Hamas and their whole terrorist mentality. The point is not to take sides, because ultimately what I think is really going to happen is going to escalate. I'm really fearful of America's involvement in Iran, Hezbollah, et cetera, et cetera. You've got Putin over there with Xi Jinping, forming an alliance against the rest of the world. So it's shaping up. It could be all Krishna's plan for a horrible world war. Ultimately, to help the devotees, but who knows what's really going to unfold here.
Yes, Prabhuji.
I see America's involvement with sending 2 aircraft carriers. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yes.
One aircraft carrier, I think, has like 8 or 9 other ships along with it. All this firepower, all these Marines, everyone, ready to, put boots on the ground and go into war.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So, regardless of our position, I feel sympathy for the Palestinian plight, and in one sense, I see what happened as a kind of it's like the slave rebellion. They were put into a slave conditions, modern day slave conditions, and they rebelled. And yes, it was horrible. It's atrocious, but at the same time, was Israel and the rest of the world just expecting them to take it for the rest of their lives? It just it's just it doesn't make a lot of sense, and I don't see any way out of the dilemma. The Middle East problem has been going on for decades with no solution in sight, and it just looks like it's getting worse.
Yes, Prabhuji.
That's just a quick comment. I don't want to get into it, but here we are for KrishnaBook reading.
Yes, Prabhuji. I mean, as Arjuna was standing on the battlefield with so much of anxiety, because this material world can sometimes overwhelm us and create a lot of anxiety. I think during these times, it's so important to be spiritually very strong and be knowledgeable in our own bhakti life and be very strong-willed, and which is what Krishna tries to uplift even Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. That there's when there's so much of anxiety in him and so much of that there is a war that's happening in front of him that's going to unfold, and how Krishna is like really lifts him up, saying like, just get away. There's this petty weakness of the heart and arise. So I think it's very important for us to be, with all the disturbances going around, to be spiritually strong and try to be fixed in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, that's always there, spiritually strong, fixed in Krishna consciousness. In one sense, it's not our war meaning something to do with conflicts within Sanatana Dharma. This is the Abrahamic Western traditions that are fighting. What we represent are the Vedic Sanatana Dharma traditions. Where the Sanatana devotees should stay out of the Abrahamic fight as much as possible. And I think that's what India is doing politically, geopolitically. They're trying to stay out of any kind of taking a side, which I think is very intelligent.
Yeah, I think
Because
yes.
it appears that the world is splitting up and taking sides in this conflict. So devotees, as far as possible, my advice is don't take sides. You could be sympathetic, but don't take sides.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Um, Prabhuji, with your
Anyone else want to say anything? I mean, it's a
yeah.
difficult time, actually.
Yes, anyone, any comments?
I just feel sorry for the poor civilians that get caught up in the middle of all this.
Yeah, the common man, isn't it? The common,
Yep.
the people.
I didn't hear that. You're feeling sorry for what? Say it again, please.
The civilians, just the
Oh,
average
yes,
person,
civilians.
the average
Yeah,
family,
innocents.
woman and man, woman and child.
Innocents, yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's true.
And it's not over. It'll be more civilian casualties. It is an old saying that the first casualty of war is the truth also. So, now you got a whole situation of who bombed the hospital in Gaza? Was it Hamas? Was it Israel? No one really knows. In the
Yes,
fog of war and the propaganda and the media, it's really hard to know what is really the truth. And anything can happen over the next weeks, months, who knows, maybe years.
yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. Prabhuji, with your permission, I will just get into the Krishna book.
Please, let's divert our attention to
Yes,
politics of the
Prabhuji.
day,
Yes, Prabhuji.
as distressful as they are, and just think about Krishna.
Yes, yes, Prabhuji. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. He Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So, as we always mention before we start the book, one very important sloka from Bhagavad Gita, how important it is to listen to Krishna Katha, where Krishna Bhagwan says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha. Kyakrudeham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjuna. That one who even understands Krishna's divine birth, divine pastimes, once he leaves the material world, will not come back again, but go directly to Krishna Loka. So it is so auspicious to listen to Krishna Katha, and especially in the association of devotees, that is when we can enjoy the real nectar. So we covered about the Rasalila that Krishna Bhagwan has done with the gopis, and it was very beautiful to understand the real story behind the Rasalila and how Krishna is always reciprocating to his devotees, and to all to understand what is the actual identity of the gopis, that they were all expansions of Radharani, and they were performing in this view, and it was completely, everything was spiritual, and a loving exchange between Krishna and the gopis. And now we just started off last week with this, but I think just wanted to recap and we can just go ahead. So this chapter is chapter number 34, Vidyadhara liberated and the demon Sankachuda killed. So that's going to be the chapter that we're going to be discussing today. Another beautiful, and every Leela of Krishna Bhagwan is so very auspicious and very divine. And when we kind of like take the essence of these beautiful divine pastimes, so when we are chanting, or when we want to think about Krishna, we can think about these divine Leelas, which will give us a lot of faith, which will give us a lot of nectar and help us in our bhakti life. So there was a time when Nanda Maharaj, who was the father of Krishna Bhagwan out there in Vrindavan, they all decided to go to Ambikavana, which is actually in Gujarat, by the Saraswati River. And it's not that regularly they were going, they were performing this Shivratri. They wanted to go and perform this function of Shivratri, which was not normally done, but during a particular time, it was decided that they wanted to go and celebrate the Shivaratri. And and this particular between the Dola Yatra ceremony and Rasa Leela, there was an important ceremony called Shivaratri. So it is mentioned that Shivaratri usually falls between the autumn season of Rasa Leela and the Dola Yatra festival. So that is the time when it was observed, and all the cowherd boys, well, the cowherd men, which for headed by Nanda Maharaj, they all go to this place called this place in Gujarat, which is called Sambikavana. And as many of you would be knowing, in India, we have many of these pilgrimages which are located close to the rivers like Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, Narmada, Godavari, and Kaveri. And this particular place called Ambikavana was situated on the banks of Saraswati, and that's where they go. So they very devoutly began to worship the deity of Lord Shiva and Ambika. And it is usually the practice that whenever this Lord Shiva is worshipped, along with that, there is also a temple of Ambika, who's none other than Durga Devi, the wife of Lord Shiva. And and because Ambika doesn't live outside the association of her husband. And after reaching Ambikavana, the cowherd men of Vrindavan first bathed themselves in the river Saraswati. And this is the usual practice in India, right? In many places, I have seen that when we go to to the temple, normally they kind of take a bath in the river nearby, and then they go ahead and then they go and worship the deities, and then there's a process that they normally follow during the pilgrimage time. And I remember, like, even in Andhra Pradesh, when the very world famous Tirupati, even before, on the top of the hill we have Tirupati, but again we have even a temple which is again there on the bottom of the hill as well. So it's always usually a practice that Lakshmi Devi is also worshipped along with that. In fact, normally when we worship Narayan, it's called as Lakshmi Narayan. So we have the temples of the Devi as well as the temples of Narayana. Similarly, here we have the temple of Lord Shiva and also of Ambika Devi. And after reaching Ambikavana, all the cowherd men who came along with Nanda Maharaj, they first bathed in this river Saraswati, and which is usually the practice. And in fact, in some of the temples, like even like as again Tirupati, when they go to the as a place of pilgrimage, they go and have a bath, and then they do the worship, and after that they kind of also shave their head, they make it as an offering. And they sometimes, many people, they take a vow, like if there's something happens, they take a vow that if something happens, they get a better job, or if there's something they promise to Krishna or Vishnu, that they're going to walk all the way up the hill in Tirupati. So like that,
Yeah,
so
that's true.
pilgrimage places are there where this kind of this kind of a ritual is followed, where they take a bath and then they pray and then they shave their heads. And according to the Vedic system, the charity is given to the Brahmanas. Now, it's, these days, the times have changed a lot. Even the Brahmins are becoming a little bit, it's turning out a bit commercial. But actually, in the ancient times, the way, according to the Vedic system, the Brahmanas, they were only into scriptures. Their only focus was be knowledgeable in the scriptures, and they were depending on other sections of the society for their livelihood. Because Krishna Bhagwan himself says in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarna Maya System Guna Karma Vibhagashaha, where he says, according to the gunas, the four divisions of the human society, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Sudras, and Vaishyas, they have been formed by Krishna himself. Krishna himself has started these four varnas. But what we've done is we converted that into caste system, which is not right according to the gunas. So, but in those days, according to the Vedic system, the most important principle that was followed is that they would give charity to the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas and the sannyasis, these are the two people who are known in the society that they are dependent, they kind of like offer charity given by the other sections of the society, mainly the Kshatriyas or Vaishyas and people like that. So, and also like here we can see that how rich people were in those days, in the Vedic system or in the culture in the Vrindavan time. The richness of the people was known in terms of how many cows they had, right? So, like for example, even Krishna and Nanda Maharaj, they had 700 or 800,000 cows in those days. So you can imagine how rich they were. And so the cowherd men from Vrindavan, they gave the Brahmana cows which are decorated with golden ornaments and beautiful garlands. So we can imagine this is not something which normal people can afford to do that, right? To the Brahmana. So we can see like from this that how rich even the people from Vrindavan were. And the Brahmanas were given charity because they were not engaged in any business profession. Like I said, their only focus was on Brahminical occupation, which is mainly about doing austerities and penances and all kind of reading into scriptures and things like that. And their main occupation was to follow the scriptures and also to educate others in to become like a Brahminical disciples. And the Brahmanas in those days, they were mostly absorbed in worshipping Vaishnava, in Lord Vishnu, and they were allowed to accept charity. So it was very auspicious. Even today, whenever the ritual happens, we call the Brahmanas and we give them all the remnants of the rice and everything as an offering to Brahmanas, because we consider that as a very auspicious thing, and it's part of the ritual that is still being followed. And also, like, we can see that how disciplined it was maintained nowadays, that in those days, if the Brahmanas received any excess charity, they would go and distribute it for the service of Vishnu. So the entire focus was on doing austerities for Vishnu, penances for Vishnu, and they were just slightly dependent. They were just depending on other people for the livelihood, just for their needs, not for the greed. And if there was anything more that was given to them, they would engage it in the worship of Vishnu. So that was the culture that was followed. That was the ancient system that is called, because as the times pass by and as we get into Kali Yuga, a lot of things get contaminated, the rituals get contaminated, and even the Brahmins these days, sometimes they don't even like to take the rice also, which is being offered as part of the ritual. So that's how the times have changed. But in the ancient times, according to Vedic scriptures, it is recommended that if one gives a charity to the Brahmanas, that will please Lord Vishnu and all the demigods. So there was the reason that all this was followed. And so normally the process is that the pilgrimage, they take bath in the nearby river and they worship the deities, do the charity, and also they used to fast on the first day. Normally they go for 3 days. In fact, even for Vrindavan also, some of the time, I remember when we went to Vrindavan as well, we stayed for just 3 days. And in those 3 days, we spent time in spiritual activities and just to have the darshan of Krishna. And then, so here also we can find that during the pilgrimage time, they stay for 3 days, and the first day is mainly spent for fasting. And at the night time, they can take some water, because it's very interesting, because Nirjala Ekadasi, one of the Ekadasi called Nirjala Ekadasi, I think it's only water that they take. They're not even supposed to take any fruits or anything like that. So here also they have done that. They were following that ritual where they do the fasting and also just living on a bit of water. So on that day, they were Nanda Maharaj and all the cowherd men who went to this place called Ambikavan for celebrating the Shivaratri. They spent that night on the banks of Saraswati, and they fasted the whole day and night with just a little water. And when they were taking rest, at that time, a great serpent from the nearby forest appeared before them and hungrily began to swallow up Nanda Maharaj. So we can imagine it must be like a massive python or something like that, which only those, like the huge ones, serpents, which can even swallow human beings. So we can find here that a great serpent appeared from the forest and began to swallow up Nanda Maharaj, and who was crying helplessly. And it's very interesting at that time, even though there were many cowherd men around, the natural reaction would have been just to wake up one of them. You can find here that Nanda Maharaj and the people of Vrindavan, they were so much depending on Krishna to save their lives. And here we can see that Nanda Maharaj was crying out helplessly, saying, "My dear Krishna, my dear son Krishna, please come and save me from this danger." So you can see that here Nanda Maharaj is crying helplessly, saying, "My dear Krishna, please come and save me from this danger. The serpent is swallowing me." So, and this is the beauty about Krishna Leelas. You can see this is what will give us faith, right? And many times when we are come across such kind of calamities, whom do we actually cry out for? So here we can see that Nanda Maharaj, the father of Krishna, is crying out for Krishna. "My dear son Krishna, please come and save me from this danger." When Nanda Maharaj was crying for help, all the cowherd men got up and saw what was happening. They began to take up the burning logs and began to beat the snake to kill it. They were trying to do all the best to just help Nanda Maharaj get out of the being swallowed by this reptile, by the snake. But in spite of being beaten by these burning logs, the serpent was not ready to give up Nanda Maharaj. So it was like literally trying to swallow up. Nanda Maharaj, and not even though they were trying their best to rescue him, still it was not giving up. And at that time, Krishna appeared on the scene and touched the serpent with his lotus feet. Immediately on being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna, the serpent shed its reptilian body and appeared as a very beautiful demigod called Vidyadhara. So now we can see this beautiful Leela, how it's unfolding. So, and this is the beauty, that when Nand Maharaj was just praying for Krishna, Krishna comes and immediately appears on the scene. And just by touching the serpent with his lotus feet, he's delivered even this serpent. And the serpent immediately has shed his reptilian body and appeared as a beautiful demigod. And this demigod name is Vidyadhara. And the bodily features were so beautiful that you can find like he was perfectly fitting the description of a demigod. He was so beautiful. There was a luster and effulgence emanating from this body, and it was garlanded with a gold necklace. He offered obeisances to Lord Krishna and stood before him with great humility. Krishna then asked the demigods, "You appear to be a very nice demigod and to be favored by goddess of fortune. How is it that you perform such abominable activities that you got the body of a serpent?" The demigod then began to narrate the story of his previous life. So we can see that suddenly when Krishna touched the feet, and if you remember earlier also, whom did Krishna put his feet on earlier? That was on Kalia, right? And the Kalia, when it was trying to kind of poison the river Yamuna, Krishna Bhagavan, again, he jumps and puts his feet on the head of Kalia. So similarly here, a similar Leela is unfolding where Krishna puts his feet on the head of the serpent, and suddenly it's come out of his of this reptile body, and his actual form of a demigod is shown up with a beautiful, and how beautiful he was, so the demigod was looking like. And so Krishna actually knows each and everyone's previous life. But like when Krishna comes to perform all these leelas, he kind of like behaves as if like he's like one of the Vrindavan men, Vrindavan boys. So he's asking here, how is it that you're looking so nice like a demigod, and how come you got this body of a serpent? And you can see that where Krishna is mentioning here, how is it that you perform such abominable activities that you got a body of a serpent, which means that when you are performing sinful activities, when you are performing such kind of abominable activities, that your next life could be the body of a serpent. So by this sentence, you can understand that because our bodies are constantly changing, because this life we take in a human form. But again, Krishna gives us the free will, how we want to use our free will. If we take this free will, advantage of this free will, and take to Krishna Bhakti, then immediately we get transferred to the Krishna Loka, or depending on the level of Bhakti, or we can get transferred to the higher planets. So it is very important that every minute of our life, we always are controlled by this Prakriti, right? Prakriti kriya manani gunai karmani sharvashah ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. The spirit soul or the Atma, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of all the activities which are actually performed by the three modes of material nature. So we are always constantly under the control of this Prakriti, which is like using us like puppets. It's making us dance to its tunes and giving us all kind of experiences in life. So, but even though this Prakriti is constantly giving us these different kind of experiences in life, we always have the free will, how we want to react. But if you take to this bhakti life, then that will help us to transcend these three modes of material nature. But here in this case, it seems to be very clear that the demigod, Vidyadhara, has done something in his previous life, because of which the karmic reaction is that in this life he has taken the form of a serpent, and which is what Krishna is asking, what is it that you've done that you got such a body of a serpent? And here now we can see that Vidyadhara is kind of telling Krishna, he's explaining to Krishna what happened. My dear Lord, he said, in my previous life, I was named Vidyadhara, and I was known all over the world for my beauty. Because I was a celebrated personality, I used to travel all over in my airplane. While traveling, I saw a great sage named Angira. He was very ugly, and because I was very proud of my beauty, I laughed at him. And due to this sinful act, I was condemned by the great sage to assume the form of a serpent. So we can understand, like sometimes our pride, pride comes before the fall, they say, that it's very important that sometimes we could be gifted by so many different talents. But if we abuse our talents, if we take pride in that and we try to show it on other people, there could be some very bad reactions that come. And in those days, the sages were so powerful because they were doing so much of austerities and they had so much of power that they could even curse people, like if anything happens like that. And you see here that Vidyadhara was blessed with so much of a beauty that he was looking so beautiful. But at the same time, because he had so much of beauty, he had so much of pride. And because of that pride, he was just, he was just laughing at, he was just, he was feeling proud and that there's a particular sage, Angira, who was not looking beautiful at all. He was very ugly, and because of which he was laughing at him. And because of that particular karmic reaction, that even because he laughed at him, he was condemned to take the form of a serpent. So sometimes people say, what do we get by knowing all Krishna Katha? What do you get by this thing? But if you can see like all these beautiful chapters of Krishna Bhakti, that every chapter is giving us these beautiful morals and beautiful takeaways where we can apply in our life, and be careful about that. Sometimes even if you're the nicest person, if you just go in the red signal, you're going to get fined, and there's no point in saying I'm a very nice guy, so don't find me. Because no, the cops will say, sorry, you crossed over and you run against the rule of the law, against the law, so you have to pay for it. So like that, similarly, so for us, many times people in the material life, they question, why did this happen to me? I'm such a nice person. Why did this happen to me? It all shows that something we have done unknowingly or knowingly, or because we haven't followed the laws of the nature, of the laws which are being governed by the nature, because we have transgressed those rules, because of which we are having this karmic reaction. So listening to these stories, we'll be able to understand that, yeah, in this life, human life is a life for correction. It's a life to make sure that, yes, through this story, I can understand that even if I'm having so much of pride, I should never look down on other people. I should never make fun of other people, because, I work in the IT field, and even Anil Prabhu works in that. And we come across so many people, like sometimes they feel like, well, I'm so good at it. So they want to see like how they can show their, the dominance on other people, or putting down other people, or trying to just victimize other people. So many things happen because we feel the pride that, yeah, I'm so good. You always want to just look down or put down other people, kind of thing. So it may happen because, like I said, these gunas are constantly working on us, the sattva, raja, and tamo guna. So through these leelas, we have to be very, very careful. We have to understand that whenever we are having pride, that, we have to be very careful not to make sure, just to make sure that, yes, we are not going to treat other people, and that could have consequences. Like, even if you're hurting some nice person, there could be some karmic reactions, because of which we will have to again be born, and again we'll have to just, go through the effects of this bad karma. So here it is a very important lesson that we have to learn from here. And even if you remember, like even in the earlier chapters where when the gopis felt a lot of pride that Krishna is with us, we are walking with Krishna, and Krishna is there in our company. And once they felt the pride that Krishna is there with them, Krishna immediately vanished, isn't it? Krishna immediately vanished because he didn't want them to have this pride. They know that Krishna is there with us. So it's very, very important to develop those qualities which are very dear to Krishna. And Krishna has given a list of all those qualities in Bhagavad Gita. What are all the qualities that he likes? And these things, we should always try to be in the mode of goodness, developing qualities like humility, humbleness, and always being supportive, and always trying to be equanimous and not treating people like enemies. And even if somebody considers you as an enemy, but you're always trying to be nice to them. So when we do certain things according to these divine laws, which are set by Krishna himself, then we will always make sure that, we are on the right side, and we will not have all these karmic reactions. One should note here that before being favored by Krishna, a person is always under the modes of material nature, however elevated he may be materially. Vidyadhara was a materially elevated demigod. He was very beautiful. He also held a great material position and was able to travel all over by airplane. Yet he was condemned to become a servant in his next life. Any materially elevated person can be condemned to an abominable species of life if he is not careful. So this is the point which I was saying. So we have to be very, very careful not to feel pride, always try to be humble, down to earth, as they say. And when we're doing our service, and because we should always try to see how we uplift other people, but not, you know, look down on other people as well. Any materially elevated person can be condemned to the vulnerable species of life. It is a misconception that after reaching a human body, one is never degraded. Vidyadhara himself stated that even though he's a demigod, he was condemned to become a serpent. But because he was touched by the lotus feet of Krishna, he immediately came to Krishna consciousness. He admitted, however, that in his previous life, he was very actually sinful. A Krishna conscious person knows that he is always a servant of Krishna. He is the most insignificant. He is most insignificant, and whatever good he does is by the grace of Krishna and spiritual master. So as you can always see, like, in our Krishna consciousness, we always say Prabhu. We address others as Prabhuji. Why we address a Prabhuji? Because in the material world, this is the biggest problem, actually, because we always feel elevated that I'm the Lord of my house. I'm the Lord of this. I have my car. There's a sense of ego. There's a sense of false pride. But when you're addressing others as Prabhu, you're saying like, I'm your servant. I'm a servant of Krishna. And how can I serve you? So when you immediately use this word Prabhuji and Prabhu, it creates a kind of a humbleness, and we get consciously, we try to engage our mind in such a way that, yes, I'm a servant of Krishna, and you're always thinking yourself as a servant of Krishna and not always thinking about yourself as a proprietor. And that such those qualities are so important as we advance in spiritual life. So as we can see here that through this Leela, we can understand that even a great demigod like Vidyadhara could be cursed to be taking the form of a serpent. So what to speak about us? So we have to be so very careful that whatever things when we are interacting with the people, because what happens is when the senses are engaged on the sense objects, immediately, we find this guna start operating, this sattva guna, rajo guna, and tamo guna, they start operating on us. Mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of fear, always constantly. That's what here the point is, that before we come to Krishna consciousness, we're always under the three modes of material nature. And Krishna say, but when we take to Krishna bhakti, and Krishna Bhagavan himself says in Bhagavad Gita that the only way we can elevate ourselves above these three gunas is by taking to the devotional life to Krishna. That's the only way we can rise above these three gunas. And it's not necessary that we think that, yeah, out of 8.4 million species, that today, in this life, I got a human body. But it doesn't mean that we have to take it for granted. Again, here we have the situation where we could do so many sinful things and we treat other people like how it has happened with Vidyadhara. And again, we could be going down to the hellish planets. And that's the reason why Krishna gives us this free will. If you're taking to Krishna Bhakti, yes, you get elevated to the higher planets, or we get elevated to even more to Krishna Loka. At the same time, if we don't understand these divine Leelas, and out of ignorance also, if we do these things, then that will put us to the most hellish planets as well. So we have to be very careful. And this knowledge is so important, because the whole purpose of Krishna is to give us this knowledge, this supreme wisdom, these three gunas. In fact, Krishna Bhagavan mentions in Bhagavad Gita, the three modes of material nature. A separate chapter, Krishna is dedicated for these three modes of material nature, because saying that I'm giving you this most supreme wisdom, this knowledge of why you're suffering because of these three gunas, and how to come out of this thing. And what is the effect of these three gunas also, Krishna Bhagavan is saying. So we have to understand these things. I'm just referring to these gunas because that's the effect of why this particular story is unfolding. The demigod Vidyadhara continues to speak to Krishna. Because I was very proud of the exquisite beauty of my body, he said, I derided the ugly features of the great sage Angira. He cursed me for my sin, and I became a snake. Now I consider that this snake by the sage was not at all a curse. Why? It was a great benediction for me. Had he not cursed me, I would not have assumed the body of a serpent and would not have been kicked by your lotus feet and thus freed from all material contamination. So Vidyadhara is in a way is very pleased, because he had the fortune of being kicked by the feet of Lord Krishna, because unless something like that would have happened, he wouldn't have had this particular this time where he could be blessed by kicking with the feet of Bhagwan Sri Krishna. So, so there are two things. One, when of course we just that we have to always be very careful that anything that we do has a karmic reaction that comes with it. A lot of people, I remember like many people, they say, you know what, I don't believe in bhakti life and all that. I'm just doing my karma. That's it. I'm not hurting any people. I'm just doing my work and this is what it is. And I think I'm good, I'm covered. But then the problem is like you may be doing your own karma, but then without your knowing also there could be so many things that you do. Like for example, you're cooking and you're thinking I cooked a beautiful meal. But while cooking, maybe you never know while you're grinding something, there could be some insects that could be, or anything which is not clear to our material eyes that could be affected by what you're doing. By walking also, you could be stamping on something. So there could be so many things that could happen which is beyond our comprehension, because of which there could be a karmic reaction. So karma yoga, people misunderstand. They're saying, yeah, I'm just a karmi, I'm just doing the right thing. No, it's not about that. And that's the reason why Krishna Bhagavan says in Bhagavad Gita, Yad karosi yad asnasi yad juhosi dadasi yad tapasyasi kaunteya tad kursu mad arpanam. Whatever you do, Arjuna, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away, whatever charity that you do, everything you do it as an offering to me. In that way, you will be free from all these karmic reactions. So it's not important that you're just doing your karma, but you're doing everything as an offering to Krishna, and to always to please Krishna. That's how we always make sure that we are not impacted by these karmic reactions. In material existence, four things are very valuable: to be born in a decent family, to be very rich, to be very learned, and to be very beautiful. These are very valuable, isn't it? When you have someone very beautiful, then you attract on the social media. And when you're very rich, in these days, in the ancient times, the most well-known person is a person who's highly knowledgeable, a sages, or or an acharya. They were the people who are well-known. But in today's world, the most well-known people are the people who are very rich. Everybody knows Ambani, but not many people would know about many sages. Or how many people would know in India about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Many people have, even though Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in India, is from the West Bengal part of India, many people have not even heard about them. But many people would know about Ambani. This is the way of Kali Yuga. The material people, they're more well-known. But in the ancient times, it was not like that. The most well-known person, most respected person was always the sages, like Ramanujacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in those days. And like that, many beautiful sages that were Madhavacharya, like that. These are considered, so these are the four valuable things: to be born in a decent family, to be rich, and to be learned. Again, again, when Krishna Bhagavan says, like, a person who's practicing Krishna consciousness, suddenly if this life comes to an end, he'll be born again in a rich family where he can continue with his spiritual activities. He could be born in a very learned family, a family of bhaktas, where he could, he could just practice his Krishna consciousness like that. So even if we look at ourselves also, we are very fortunate, because we definitely would have done so many pious things that we are born in families where we were able to practice Krishna consciousness. This is not a small thing. Janmantara sahasreshu tapojnana samadhihi naranam shina punyanam Krishna bhakte prajayate. In Vishnu Sahasranam, it says that after doing so many lifetimes of piousness and so many austerities, penances, Krishna, finally we get a life of Krishna bhakti. So it is so auspicious to get a life which is being devoted to Krishna bhakti, and we should make the maximum use of this particular life. And so these are considered, so these four things are considered as material assets. But without Krishna consciousness, these material assets sometimes become sources of sin and degradation. It is very much possible, isn't it? We see in many places, like people who are sons of a very rich family, they get spoiled, right? And I remember like seeing in the newspaper, like a rich person, his son is driving a latest BMW, and he goes and bangs in some poor people, or he kills people. And with the effect that he's being imprisoned, or he'll have to just go through the fines and things like that. So many times you find, like, because of this beauty, like how Vidyadhara was facing, we could be having a life in which we are exploiting and trying to make money out of it and trying to look down on other people. So there could be a situation where some of these four valuable things can also be like like a source of sin or degradation, that if you're taking too much of pride in all these things, that we may land up a situation like Vidyadhara. So despite Vidyadhara being a demigod and having a beautiful body, he was condemned to the body of a snake. And all this happened because of pride. Like they say, pride comes before a fall, and this is exactly what has happened. Therefore, from this incident, we can learn that those who are too proud of their material assets or who are inimical towards others are degraded to the body of snakes. Others are considered, a snake is considered to be the most cruel and envious living entity. But those who are human beings are envious of others. Others are considered to be more vicious than snakes. The snake can be charmed or controlled by the mantras and herbs, but a person who's envious cannot be controlled by anyone. So we can see that what kind of a life that we could get when we take too much of a pride and we try to hurt others with our behavior. So here is saying, my dear Lord, Vidyadhara is continuous. Now, since I think that I have become freed from all kind of sinful reactions, sinful activities, I'm asking for your permission to return to my abode, to the heavenly planets. This request indicates that persons who are attached to fruitive activities, desiring promotion to the comforts of the higher planetary systems, cannot achieve their ultimate goal of life without sanction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So even to go into the supreme higher planets, higher planetary system, that requires the sanction of Krishna Bhagwan. And you can see over here, even though he's a demigod, he's asking for permission from Krishna to return to his abode. And you can see, like, even in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna Bhagwan tells Arjuna, Hato va prapsasi swargam jitva va boksasi mahim tasmat uttistaya kaunteya yuddhaya krita nischaya. He tells Arjuna, either you'll be killed on this battlefield and will directly go to heavenly planets, or you will win the battlefield and enjoy a earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up and stand up and fight. So by following your dharma, so from that sloka, we can understand that when we are following our dharma and we are doing the right on the right side of dharma and we are doing the right thing, there's a chance that when we are in the mode of goodness, we'll be elevated to the heavenly planets. So this is what is very important. But nothing can happen without the sanction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is Krishna Bhagwan. So it is also stated in Bhagavad Gita, the less intelligent people who want to achieve material benefits, they worship the different kinds of demigod, but they are actually getting the benediction from the demigods through the permission of Lord Vishnu. So Krishna Bhagavan mentions that also, like, even though sometimes we are praying to other gods, like somebody could be praying to Ganesha, somebody could be praying to Shiva, or somebody could be praying to Durga Devi, or Kartik, and things like all different demigods. But we have to understand that all that is being granted. Your boons are being, or your wishes are being fulfilled, or whatever we are requesting, the material benefits, they are being granted by these demigods only on the sanction of Krishna Bhagwan. So this is the most important thing that we need to understand, that everything, the source of whatever material things that we're getting is coming from Krishna. And we can see from the story of Dhruv Maharaj, right? Dhruv Maharaj, he was such a small kid, a 5-year-old kid. And when he takes this mantra from Narada Muni and he kind of worships Supreme Paramatma, Sri Krishna Bhagwan. And when Krishna appeared in front of him and asked him, like, okay, what kind of a favor do you want me to do? And when he sees Krishna, he says, Krishna, I do not, after seeing you, I understand that I've been praying for broken glass pieces. When someone like you're like a diamond standing in front of me, and I don't want anything else. So I do not want any of this material benediction. So that's what the intelligent people, they're only directly, we are worshipping Vishnu or Krishna. We're not looking for any kind of a material benefit, because that is going to be taken care of by Krishna. The intelligent people do not worship demigods or ask favors for them. He directly becomes Krishna consciousness, and if there's any desire for material benefit, he asks Krishna, but not the demigods, because everything is coming from Krishna. Even if any demigod is granting you something, that is coming from Krishna as well. So I want to just pause over here in the interest of time, because it's 9 o'clock, it's 9:06. I want to ask if there's any realizations or anything, or I want to just ask your direction, whether you want me to cover a paragraph more, or whether we should stop here and just have some reflections as well. Ramnath Prabhuji, Sanchit Mat, Anil Prabhu, Amar Prabhu, Paritash Prabhu, anything that you would like to add?
I don't have anything specific to say. You've covered a lot of material. Maybe someone else.
Amar Prabhu.
Hare, Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Krishna,
Yeah, another beautiful. Sorry, Amoga Prabhu, were you saying something? Yes.
he's on
Yep.
mute. Yamaga Prabhu is on mute.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, another beautiful pastime and so much learnings which are so uh, very common, but not like, as they say, common sense is not that common. So like envy, jealousy, ego, and all this, how these little things, they wind up our life in such a way that and main thing what I wonderfully I realized from here, like apart from of course what you said is so true, like Krishna, he knows our past, he knows our future. So instead of knowing that, whichever demon which came, like he gave the punishments accordingly. To Putna, he killed like Aghasura and all the other demons, Vakasura and all. He killed them, but based upon their past karma. But with him, Vidyadhara, he knew like how much offense he had done to a sage. So based on that, even knowing, so only he kicked, like just as if to give him a chance to touch the lotus feet in that way, like he did to Kalia. Of course, for Kalia, there was one request from the Nagapatnis to, let him go and not kill him. Maybe Krishna would have killed, but because of mercy, he let him go. But for him, I mean, so how beautiful he knows our past, and that depending upon that, he punishes. Like knowing that he was swallowing away his father, he could have easily, just taken his mouth into two pieces, like, but he did not do that. He just, for a little, of course, it was an offense, but he let him go and get the opportunity to have touch his lotus feet. So, and even knowing that, he's asking him, like as you nicely mentioned, that what was your offense, like what did you do that you get such abominable crime? Like I mean, he knew that what he has done, because he punished him accordingly, and even then he's asking. So all these leelas are so sweet and like so much to relish. So yeah, that's my realization. Hare Krishna.
Wonderful, Sanjitji. As always, giving your reflections, and it's so important to understand. And also, it's I think just to that, when you were mentioning about it, it came to my mind that how careful we have to be with the sages. Like when you say sages, again, they were like devotees of Krishna and of Vishnu. That we should be extremely careful not to offend or give our our pranams and respect to devotees, and just to make sure that at least consciously we should not make any offense towards them, and that could incur such kind of a reaction as well. So yeah, absolutely. Amaga Prabhuji, anything that you want to mention? Yeah, okay. I will, so Prabhuji, like, so shall we end here and just take to the next, the remaining ones for the next week? Just a few more.
Did you end this chapter? Is that what happened?
No, Prabhuji, this is just a few more paragraphs are there. Of course, this is like there's one more Leela in the same chapter as well, but then this one is like just another couple of paragraphs are still pending. Yes, Prabhuji.
I mean, it's okay with me if you go further.
Prabhuji, so in that case, I will just cover the one which about this Leela, and I'll leave the next Leela for the next week. It's in the same chapter, so just only a couple of paragraphs. So Vidyadhara, awaiting Krishna's permission to return to the heavenly planet, said, "Now I have been touched by your feet and I am relieved of all material pangs. You're the most powerful of all mystics. You're the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you're the master of all devotees. You're the proprietor of all planetary systems, and therefore I am asking for your permission. You may accept me as fully surrendered unto you. And I know very well that persons who are constantly engaged in chanting your name attain release from all sinful reactions, and certainly persons who are fortunate enough to be personally touched by your lotus feet are freed. Therefore, I'm sure that I'm now relieved of the curse of the Brahmana simply by seeing you and being touched by the lotus feet. So this particular paragraph itself is so important to understand that even the demigods is so knowledgeable about the bhakti life. But here you can see that he also recognizes that Krishna is the most powerful of all mystics. And we all remember that in Bhagavad Gita, towards the end of Bhagavad Gita, what Sanjaya says, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Pardo Dhanurdaraha, Tatra Shri Vijayabhuti, Dhruva Nitirmatir Mama. Where he says, wherever there is Krishna and wherever there is devotees, wherever there is Krishna, the master of all the mystic power. So here you can see that Vijayadhara is aware that Krishna is the master of all mysticism. And Anadi, and also like Brahma says about to Krishna, like that he's the original, he's the first personality of Godhead. And also in Krishna Bhagavan himself mentions in Bhagavad Gita that he's the proprietor of all planetary system. Bhoktaram Yajna Sapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, where he says he's the proprietor of all planetary systems. So he's fully aware of all these things, Vidyadhara. It's just that he's been cursed and he's fully surrendered onto Krishna. And this is the most important point. Like whenever we see the entire, whether it's in Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is surrendered to Krishna, Draupadi is surrendered to Krishna, Kunti Devi surrendered to Krishna. So we will be able to have the mercy of Krishna, the grace of Krishna, only when we surrender to Krishna. And that is when we will be able to have the grace and blessings of Krishna. And here he is also knowledgeable that Vidyadhara is also aware that, we'll be freed from all the sinful reactions by chanting the holy names of Krishna, because there could be so many things, because anarthas and samskaras from so many lives because of which we are suffering. And those suffering can be uplifted can be removed or nullified when we take to Krishna Bhakti. In this way, Vidyadhara got permission from Lord Krishna to return to his home in the higher planetary systems. After receiving this permission, he circumambulated the Lord and offered his obeisances, and then he returned to the planets. And then Nanda Maharaj, he was relieved of the serpent, of this danger being provided. So on the way back, the cowherd man who had come to perform this Shiva Puja for Shiva and Ambika, when they were returning back to Vrindavan, they were just trying to recall how Krishna has been always coming to their rescue. And this particular, that made them get more attached to Krishna. So even similarly, when we understand this Krishna Leelas, it will help us get more attached to Krishna, because we are able to enjoy the nectar of Krishna Katha. And this will help us. Maybe we are not seen all this happen at that time, but we can, when we go through this divine Leelas, it gives us an idea, it gives us this knowledge that how beautiful Krishna has been always protecting the people who are very faithful for him, because he says in Bhagavad Gita, Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranishyati, that Krishna says, I will always protect my devotees. So even the gopis, and also to understand that the gopis are worshipping goddess Katyayani, but the main purpose was to get more attached to Krishna. And so even in the persons who are attached to worshipping demigods like Brahma, Shiva, Indra, and Chandra for personal benefit. So Krishna mentions that people are praying to these demigods for material benefit. They're very less intelligent. They've forgotten the real purpose of life. But when we come to Krishna Bhakti, Krishna is not offering material benefit, but he's offering himself. He's offering Krishna Loka, saying that when you engage yourself in completely in chanting the holy names, we directly go to Krishna Loka. Even the whole purpose of even understanding the Krishna Leelas, Krishna Bhakti, is also about getting closer to Krishna. Whatever they did. So here we can see the inhabitants of Vrindavan, their whole purpose was to get into Krishna Bhakti. They were not ordinary people. Whatever they did in Vrindavan, they did everything to please Krishna. If one worshipped the demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to become more attached to Krishna, then that is approved. If but one goes to the demigods for some material personal benefits, that is condemned. So you look in Sanatan Dharma, like a lot of people, irrespective of whichever god they pray, Ganesha is the first god they normally pray. So even if you want to talk about Ganesha, like, to remove obstacles, we can pray to remove the obstacles on the way to Krishna Bhakti. Or Ganesha, it was he who has written the Mahabharata when Vyasadeva was reciting. So we can pray to Ganesha to give us the intellect to understand more about Krishna Katha, or to understand the Bhagavatam, to understand. So, but the whole purpose should be towards Krishna. So like here, when they're worshipping Katyayani or when they're worshipping Shiva, to be more attached to Krishna, and that is approved. So, which is very important for us to understand. That the purpose is Krishna. If the final goal is Krishna, then it is fine that even if you're praying to the other demigods. And after this incident, on a very pleasant night, Krishna and his elder brother Balaram, they went into the forest of Vrindavan, accompanied by the damsels of Rajbhumi, and they began to enjoy the company. And we can see that the young damsels of Raja, they were nicely dressed with a nice pulp of sandalwood and all that, and the moon was shining. So this description that Prabhupada gives us in Krishna Katha is so beautiful, because it gives us our imagination. We can understand how beautiful it must be that the moon was shining and the breeze was blowing, and all the beautiful Malika flowers, and taking advantage of this in this beautiful ambience that was there with all the damsels and this beautiful moon shining. Krishna and Balaram were beginning to sing so beautifully, and the damsels around, they were so absorbed in this song that they almost forgotten themselves. So here we can see that Krishna Bhakti is all about a very joyful thing. A lot of people think that Bhakti life means austerities, and we have to go through so many pains, and we have to give up so many things and things like that. But actually, if you look at it, it's in the mode of Suddha Bhakti, or mode of pure goodness, where actually the whole purpose is to get completely engrossed ourselves in the joy of Krishna Bhakti. As we can see sometimes in Mano, in other Krishna temples, everybody who's listening to the Kirtan, they're just completely in a different world of joy, because that's making our Atmas full of joy. Because they were connected to Krishna through our Atma. And that's the reason why Bhakti life is so joyful to be performed. But because we are so absorbed in material life, we are not getting the taste of it. But when we take to Krishna Bhakti, then we'll be able to enjoy this beautiful nectar. So that is where we are. I just want to stop here, because this is the part of the first half of the chapter, or 3/4 of the chapter, which is mainly about Vidyadhara. The next one is all about another demon, and which we will cover in the next chapter, in the next session, Prabhuji.
Okay. Okay, very nice. You've explained very nicely, in a very succinct way, the idea of the worship of Durga and the Devatas, for getting Krishna as the right thing to do, and to avoid worship of Durga for material benefits. So a lot of times now during Navaratri, of course, this was never an issue during the Prabhupada era, but now ISKCON is integrated more into the larger Sanatana Dharma community. So sometimes people wonder, well, how do Hare Krishna devotees celebrate Navaratri? Well, essentially we don't. Because what goes on in the Sanatana Dharma communities is worship of the goddess, worship of the Divine Mother, but basically approaching her for all the wrong reasons. Now, as I understand it, though, one of the forms of Durga, the Navaratri, is Katyayani. And so for the Vaishnavas, we really don't, celebrate Navaratri. I mean, if devotees want to go to a Hindu temple and observe Navaratri, I mean, that's their own business in one sense. It's really not recommended. But if you really want to get into it, want to celebrate worship of Katyayani, well, that comes after Kartik. After Kartik, at the end of Kartik, the first thing is the marriage of Tulsi to Shalagram, and then the next day is Katyayani Vrat. And of course, the gopis are the topmost examples of pure Krishna Bhakti. And yes, they approached Katyayani, but we should understand what they actually did. No one could really follow their practice. What they did during that month, the Katyayani Vrat, it's very cold, and every day in the morning, they would assemble a shape on the banks of the Jamuna. There'd be some sand, and they'd form a sand, a sand deity of Katyayani or Durga. And then to the sand deity, they would worship her with paraphernalia, artik, flowers, prayers. Then, basically, that sand deity would be destroyed every day. So every day, you'd make a sand deity, worship her, destroy her. And they would bathe in the Jamuna, very, very cold and austere. But the real austerity of Katyayani Vrat was such a sheer austerity. They would eat once a day. Once a day. I mean, for me, I like to have good three meals a day. Yeah, sometimes I eat 2 meals a day. Sometimes I'm snacking here, snacking there, but once a day, very serious vrat, once a day. And what would they eat? You know what they eat?
No, Prabhuji.
Sham, you don't know?
No, Prabhuji.
Prabhu, some khichdi without salt and turmeric, I guess. Something like that.
Rice, dal, no vegetables, no ghee, no butter, no spices. I think salt was optional. I don't know. I think they had a little salt. But basically, I mean, how often can you eat like that day after day after day, week after week, basically a month long? How many of us would be able to eat once a day, simple rice, dal, no vegetables, no fruits, no samosas, no this, no going to Govindas, no getting the Mahaprasadam, no, for many of us, we really require, nice prasadam to maintain our Krishna bhakti. But the gopis, such renounced souls, so serious. 1 month worshiping Katyayani. Their purpose was, of course, to get Krishna as their husband, to get Krishna, to serve Krishna. But the vrat they took to Durga, to Katyayani, very, very serious. It's nothing to be laughed at. In other words, when we think of Navaratri, it's all very lax. It's all like a social scene. It's all very fun and games, so to speak. And they're praying for all the wrong reasons. But real worship of the goddess, as the gopis exemplified, very, very serious, very austere, and very determined. They're the highest yogis, the highest bhakti yogis. How many of us can actually follow that example? That's my point that I'm trying to say. I know I can't. I mean, if I were to try, I'd probably give up after a few days eating this rice and dal, no spices, no ghee, nothing, just plain. I mean, I can't imagine what that tastes like: rice and dal, rice and dal, rice and dal.
Yes, Prabhuji. It shows there's so much of austerity that they have done in
Yeah,
those.
you can live off of that. That's okay. You can live off that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like wartime living or something.
Yeah, yes, Prabhuji. Yeah.
But they would voluntarily do that as part of their vrat and worship Durga every day in the morning too.
Yeah.
So, I guess if devotees want to really do that, they can do that. It's an individual thing. Certainly, ISKCON doesn't promote that.
Yeah.
At the same time, this is part of our tradition. This is, we are worshippers of Radha and Krishna, and the gopis are extolled as the highest emblem of pure devotional service. But very difficult. It can be done if someone wants to do it. Go to Vrindavan, worship Durga on the banks of Jamuna, eat once a day rice and dal, no spice. I suppose if you're really serious, you can do that. But for most of us, it's just inconceivable.
Yes, Prabhu.
Anyway, that's what I wanted to
It
say.
is that they are done. Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
That's
Prabhu.
real Navaratri. In other words, that's worship of the goddess.
Yes,
Serious business.
yes, Prabhuji. As you
Yeah.
can see, like even in the pilgrimage, in the chapter that we covered, the first day is supposed to be for fasting, but how many times we observe that actually, fasting and
Yeah. And
But-
we can see this is kind of mood is exemplified there in the Goswamis, etc. But we're not expected really to do that. I mean, we worship the goddess in many ways. Tulsi Puja and Jagannath Baladev Subhadra. We worship Subhadra. She's also a form of Durga, but we worship her as Yoga Maya. We worship Radha and Krishna in the temple in a very gorgeous, spectacular way. We're not expected to undergo these kind of severe austerities, yet these examples are there for us to understand the level of devotion that the gopis have to achieve their goal, to get Krishna as their husband.
yes, Prabhuji. Absolutely. The ultimate goal should be for Krishna. That's the main thing to understand. Because typically in Sanatana Dharma, there's always like in every home you find people worshipping, like, families, they worship other gods as well. But the purpose should be like mainly, it's all about having the knowledge that the ultimate purpose should be Krishna.
Yes, yes.
Attain Krishna.
Prabhupada was very, very strong on 2 points: Mayavad philosophy and demigod worship. But there is, as I've often said, there's a subtlety to the demigod worship issue, and that is there's a right way and a wrong way. So basically, Prabhupada was very, very strong on worship of the devatas in the wrong way. So what goes on is Navaratri. Basically, it's mundane.
Yes.
We don't take part in it.
So,
It's a distraction from our Krishna consciousness, and we become confused. We should depend on Krishna for everything material, and for approaching the devatas, Shiva, Durga, Ganesh, for advancing in Krishna bhakti. Yes, that is allowed, and is even can be extolled as a great spiritual virtue, but it's not easy also,
yes, yes,
or
Prabhuji.
can be easily misapplied. Therefore, in general, devotees don't do it.
Yes,
In general.
yes, Prabhuji. Thank you for those insights, Prabhuji. Very valuable to know some of these details. Prabhuji, with your permission, I think we will end for today, and we will again resume next Thursday as we get closer to
Okay.
the top of the month. Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for your
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
And 3 Lord Haribol to Shyam Prabhuji and Ramnasuk
Jai
Prabhuji.
Shyam, thank you very much again.
Hari Bol, Hari
Hari
Bol,
Bol, Hari Bol.
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol, Hari
Thank you so
Bol,
much,
Hari Bol.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for your
Hare
support.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.